On the Afterwards podcast this week, best-selling author John Grisham and co-author Jim McCloskey talk about their book, Framed, Astonishing Stories of Wrongful Convictions. It details 10 true stories of Americans who were innocent but found guilty, and takes a closer look at what leads to wrongful convictions and the factors that make them so hard to reverse. John McCloskey created Centurion Ministries in 1983, the first organization devoted to freeing the wrongly convicted. The authors spoke with David Davis, senior pastor of the Nassau Presbyterian Church in Princeton, New Jersey, in October 2024.
This summer, honor your democracy hero and ignite C-SPAN's America 250 coverage, our 18-month ad-free celebration of our nation's story. Give $25 or more by August 31st at cspan.org/donate to add the person who first showed you democracy in action to our Democracy Hero wall. We'll thank you with a C-SPAN decal. Your gift keeps these stories alive nationwide. Donate today at cspan.org/donate. Thank you.
Jim and John, I've been on this platform pretty much every week for the last 24 years or so.
Yeah.
So I find it both humbling and inspiring to share this platform with you, and a bit intimidating. I had the chance to read Framed. I might be the only one in the room who's actually read it, because in preparation for this conversation, I was given a galley copy, and I will not reveal any spoilers for the folks who are going to read it, and some have started now, I saw earlier in the evening. And I'll come back to Jim in a minute, John, but how were you drawn to the work of the Innocence Project and the Innocence community? Was it related to your other only nonfiction?
Yeah, I mean, I was a lawyer. I still think of myself as a lawyer. I was a lawyer for 10 years in a small town in Mississippi many years ago, and I was starving to death. I had a lot of clients, most of whom were indigent criminal clients, and I did a lot of criminal work, and I never had a client I thought was wrongfully convicted or abused or mistreated by the system. I knew the judges, the prosecutors, the police, we all had a good system, and I assumed that's the way it worked everywhere. And so I did that for 10 years and finally got a break and had a career change and moved on to something a bit more profitable. And I missed the first big wave of DNA exonerations in the 1990s when Jim was getting people out of prison. And then in 2004, I read the obituary in the New York Times of a man who had just obviously passed away, and he was my age at the time, my race, religion, neck of the woods, whatever, and he had just, the obituary said, Ron Williamson, freed from death row, dies at the age of 53. And I thought, wow, and it was a picture of Ron in court the day he was set free. And he was obviously, had been through a lot. And I read the obituary, and it was fascinating. It's an obituary. I love obituaries for some reason, especially New York Times, because they give you so many great characters you never heard of. But Ron was just like me, and down to the fact he dreamed of playing professional baseball. He was a first-round draft pick of the Oakland A's in 1972. And in his little corner of Oklahoma, which wasn't far from where I grew up in Arkansas, he thought the scouts, the coaches, they thought Ron was the next Mickey Mantle, who was also from a small town in Oklahoma. And Ron certainly thought so. And he was a draft pick, and he went off, it didn't happen. He had problems, and he came back home. And this town turned on him in such a way he was framed for the murder of a young woman and sent to death row, and came within 5 days of being executed in 1992 for a crime he had nothing to do with. And that was the obituary. And I said, that's my next book. I've never done nonfiction. I don't know how to do nonfiction. I'm not a journalist, I'm not a reporter, but I know a story. And so I called my publisher right then. I said, go read the New York Times. That's my next book. And that was 2004. That's how I got drawn into the world of wrongful convictions. I didn't plan to. I was having far too much fun with the novels to mess with nonfiction. It's too much work, too much research. And you have to be accurate, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm not known for accuracy. I'm not. I have no patience with research, okay? I just make it all up, but suddenly I had to be accurate.
Thank you. Jim, both Corey and I mentioned your first relationship, Jorge de los Santos, Trenton State Prison.
Right.
You came to believe he was innocent.
Yeah.
Corey mentioned a little bit of your relationship.
Yeah.
Could you expand upon that?
Well, I was 38 years old and had left the business world and decided to become a church pastor. So I went to Princeton Theological Seminary to get what they call a Master of Divinity degree. My second year there, I served as a student chaplain at Trenton State Prison and would visit the 2 cell blocks 2 afternoons a week. One of the 40 men in their respective cells was, all he talked about was his innocence. Long story short, at that time, I had never had any experience whatsoever with any facet of the criminal justice system, never been in a courthouse. And so eventually I got his transcripts, read them carefully, asked him a million questions over a 3-month period of time whenever I would appear at his cell. Finally, at the end of this process, after Thanksgiving, when he knew I had read the transcripts, he said, I've answered a million questions that you've posed over the last couple of months. I got a question for you. And I gulped. And I said, what's that, Chiefy? He said, do you believe I'm innocent? I said, well, yeah, I do believe you're innocent. Then he shocked me with, well, what are you going to do about it? And I said, what can I do about it? I'm a seminary student. I'm going on to become a church pastor. No experience in the world of criminal justice or murders or anything like that. He said, I've been on my knees for 7 years praying to God to send somebody to get me out of this hellhole. You don't know it, but you're that man. So, you know, I went back to, he also said this, which kind of got me. What are you going to do? Are you going to go back to your nice, safe, secure little seminary and pray that somebody will get me out? I said, well, that's what I was thinking about doing. He said, you got to come and you got to get me out of here. So I went back to the seminary and thought about it, prayed about it, and decided to take a year off from the seminary and do what I could to free him. And Paul Castellero, who's somewhere here, Paul was the attorney up in Hoboken, solo practitioner, and he and I worked together, and we freed him in the summer of '83. And by that time, I had come across 3 other New Jersey lifers in whose innocence I had come to believe. And I decided this was my calling to work to free innocent people in prison rather than going on and becoming an ordained church pastor. That's how Centurion started.
Thank you. John, Jim, could you tell us when you and John first met? Because I found out you guys you have a little bit different recollection.
Well, as usual,
the facts are always fluid with.
He makes up stuff. He makes stuff up. Now I know exactly when it was. It was in the year 2008. I'm in St. Louis working on a case, and I read in the paper that John Grisham was going to be speaking at some event in St. Louis. So I went over there that night and waited in the receiving line, shook his hand, introduced myself. He said, oh, Jim, I know what you guys do, Centurion. You guys are amazing. You take the hard cases on. So I asked him then and there if at some point down the road he would be willing to come to Princeton and speak on our behalf at a fundraiser or some kind of gala, which he agreed to do. And then he came up here in 2010, right in this sanctuary, and spoke on our behalf.
Right.
Do I have that right, John?
Yeah, well, sort of. The case I mentioned when I was in Oklahoma with my very first nonfiction book, I was in a lawyer's office in Norman, Oklahoma, stacks of books, files everywhere. And on some of the files, there was a name Centurion Ministries. And I asked my lawyer buddy, I said, who is this guy? Who are these people? Some kind of religious society? He said, no, it's a guy in Princeton, New Jersey. named Jim McCloskey, who has this Innocence group, and they're doing great work. They're kicking ass, and they were involved in that case momentarily, had to bow out for some reason, is not unusual. So I contacted Jim after that, and that's kind of how we met. I don't recall the St. Louis story. I'm not sure that's accurate.
I remember that very clearly.
I do recall coming.
Like it happened yesterday.
And we came in 2010. Every year, as you know, the Centurion ministries they bring all their exonerees back here for one glorious weekend. It's family weekend. It is truly remarkable when these guys come back. How many do you have this year, Corey? 25 out of 36. They freed 71, and 36 are still alive, and so 25 came back this year. They bring their families, they bring their kids and grandkids, and it's an absolute celebration that is, I've been here a couple times for that. I came back in 2010, and Brian Dennehy, one of your buddies, was here, and we spoke that night and partied and had a great time. And the love and emotion is just incredible.
Brian Dennehy was going to make a movie about you and play you in the movie. Yeah,
then we worked together on a screenplay, and it was a total dud.
Yeah.
Jim wanted Brad Pitt to play his role, and Brian said, we can't get Brad Pitt, so we have to get somebody. All movies collapse. All of them collapse.
John, you've never written a book. Out of 50 books, you've never written a book with someone else. Tell us how this collaboration, how this idea came to be.
Well, once I got involved with wrongful convictions, and I realized every wrongful conviction case deserves a book, because the elements are there for great storytelling. There's great drama, injustice, corruption, loss, perseverance, maybe redemption, maybe not, but these elements go into the stories that are just gravy for a writer. And you have to just love these stories. Every wrongful conviction should be a big book. And once I did The Innocent Man in 2006, first of all, I said, never again will I touch nonfiction. Yeah. It's way too much work. Again, you have to research, you have to be accurate, and people are going to sue you. And I got sued 4 times. We haven't been sued yet, but we probably will be sued.
Well, it just came out today.
Yeah, we'll probably get sued. They'll probably. The lawsuits will start coming tomorrow, probably. They'll probably start filing suit. Anyway, that's a risky run, and so I thought, I'm not sure I want to do this again. But over the years, as I've been involved with the Innocence Project in New York for 15 years now, and Centurion for 5 years, and Jim and I we've known each other for a long time, and anytime we're together, we start telling these incredible stories. Have you heard about such and such? Have you heard about this case in Florida? We compare notes about all the wacky, crazy, incredible, astonishing stories that you can't believe happens. And so I've thought about, for years, taking 10 stories, condensing them to a smaller story, to 10,000 words each. Innocent Man's 100,000 words. I mean, that's not enough. But I thought if we could get down to 10 stories, 10,000 words each, I could publish these things. And I said, I'm not going to do it because I'll get sued 10 times. And so I'm not going to do it. So finally, Jim didn't want to do it. Believe it or not, when I mentioned the book to Jim, he was very reluctant for many reasons to jump in. And
including that he just retired.
Yeah, but he's not really retired. But we finally came up with this plan to write 10 stories, 5 for Jim, 5 for me. I knew all of his stories. He knew all of my stories. I said, Jim, I'm going to write mine. You write yours. I'm not going to edit you. You don't edit me. If we really disagree with something in one of your stories, I'll say it. You say it. Whatever. I'm not sure we ever did that.
We never did.
Yeah, we were too lazy. But one reason I did it, I wanted to write the book, but I wanted somebody else to do half the work. So I talked Jim into it.
Well, go ahead.
So it's actually 6 and 6 now in the book, right?
What do you mean?
Is it 5 and 5?
5 and 5. 5 and 5, yeah.
5 and 5. How did you each pick the 5 that you were writing about?
Well, let me add one thing to what John just said. When he asked me to co-write this book that he just described, I was hesitant to take it because I had just come off a year or two of writing When Truth Is All You Have. You might want to get that when you get a chance.
Now available in fine bookstores everywhere.
It was published in 2020 by Doubleday, and it's hard work to write. It was a memoir. It recounted the 40 years of Centurion Ministries' work with encounters with the criminal justice system and my own journey that led me to this work. But anyway, that was hard work. First of all, I'm a C student at Bucknell. I graduated at 2.005. And I'm sure my professors at that university, wherever they may be now, are just shaking their head in disbelief that I'm sitting up here with this gentleman. But anyway, and then also I said to myself, I'm not a professional writer. I'm an amateur. I can write okay. I'm not a bad writer. I'm not a great writer like he is. But I can write with clarity and tell a story and have it flow and have a good structure to it. And besides that, I had a great editor at Doubleday, Chris Puopolo, the senior editor for nonfiction at Doubleday. She was very helpful. But also I was worried that if I undertook this project with John, given who he is and all his unbelievable success, you know, this guy has sold 400 million copies of his books collectively.
450.
450? Okay. I think Truth came in at 10,000. But anyway, it's hard work, and I knew it. But I decided I didn't want to disappoint him or Doubleday. And by the way, for him to ask me for the first time in his 30-some-odd year career to be a co-writer for me with hardly any experience, that took a lot of courage on his part, because he really, really didn't know how this was going to work out. And I don't know if you took that to Doubleday. You have an idea, you want to invite McCloskey. And if you did take that to Doubleday, I wouldn't be surprised if they cautioned you about, John, you sure you want to do this, John?
They said, God, no, not McCloskey.
Yeah, right. That's what I figured.
But we went back and forth, and finally we got down to, I tried to talk Jim into it. And he said, well, I'm just kind of curious, can we make any money off this?
Oh, for God's sake.
And I said, yeah, we can sell some books. He said, okay, I'm in. So we're making a few bucks, right, Jim?
Yeah.
We're making a few bucks.
Yeah.
And Jim's first reaction when I mentioned money, he said, it will all go to Centurion. Honest reaction, he said, it's all.
Now, I've had some second thoughts about that.
Yeah. I did not say mine's going to Centurion.
Right. Yeah. But the thing about working with him, he's a prince of a human being. He's collegial. He works with harmony. He's tolerant. He also gave me what I need, whatever I do. I need freedom. I need freedom to think and freedom to act. And he allowed me to pick my 5 stories out and write them as I best saw fit. And so I think the world of this man, and I don't know what, well, he's a great human being.
But back to your question, by the way, Jim.
Yeah.
The original question.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a different one while you're on this topic.
Yeah.
10 stories, 23 people.
Yes.
When I read the book, as soon as I finished it, I called Jim and said, Jim, I'm astounded how you could maintain your voice and your style. They alternate chapters, and it was incredible to read your both distinctive voices coming through in your own style, your own content, your own writing style, but also you could hear your voices. I mean, for someone who's read a lot of Grisham, and for someone who loves you like a brother, I could hear your voices. What did you think when you were reading each other's copies?
Well, I'll tell you what I was thinking. This guy can flat out write. And I'm not sure I measure up to this. And it made me shrink a little in terms of self-esteem. But again, I got tremendous encouragement, not only from John about the writing, the stories, but also from Doubleday and their editing staff up there. It was a pleasure to work with everybody. So he revived me, encouraged me, and brought me back to where I think I can do this.
C-SPAN's Afterwards podcast continues in a moment. Now back to C-SPAN's Afterwards podcast.
Yeah.
I said, look, Jim, you're not me, I'm not you. I'm not going to write your stories. I'm not going to edit your stories. If I see something that bothers me, I'll tell you. I never did, I don't think.
No?
So, he didn't, we had the same deal. He never said something to me about one of my, it was total freedom. And when you read the stories, they're alternating chapters. When Jim tells a story, his name is attached to it, back and forth. You know who's writing the story. So it was total creative freedom to write what you want to write. We never interfere with each other. We would have if we needed to. Yeah. We had a great editor at Doubleday and a great publisher at Doubleday, and they've been my publisher for 35 years, and Jim's publisher. So we trust them. So it was a grueling experience.
One story that I had with much fear and trepidation taking to John. We all had agreed, Doubleday, John, myself, 10,000 words per story, and that's it. When I got to my 5th story, which is a 47-year saga in Texas, the Curry Max Cook story, I came in at 20,000 words. Yeah, exactly. And
those of us who've heard you give these summaries at galas, we weren't surprised.
I wouldn't call it a summary.
So
encyclopedia.
So I had stepped way over the line. But I went down to Charlottesville, had lunch with John, explained to him why this story was so complicated and needed twice the number of words that the other stories did. And I said, John, I need your support. You got to help me out here. Because Doubleday was really having a heart attack over this. And so John, that afternoon, after I asked him to help me out and support me, even though I didn't deserve it, he emailed the editor at Doubleday and said, I'm fine with 20, let's go with it. And with that, the green light, Doubleday was happy with it. Yeah. He said it's good, they said it's good.
So five each, 23 total people. You could have picked 71 cases, and you could have picked a gazillion cases. How did you pick the ones you picked?
Go ahead.
It was very difficult. It was very difficult because we see so many cases. Again, I'm on the Innocence Project board in New York, and we review cases all the time. And once you get locked into this work, this innocence work, wrongful conviction work, and this is where I live. I'm a lawyer. My interest is with the law. I study the law, lawyers, law firms, courts, cases, appeals, trials, crimes, whatever. That's kind of where I hang out. And I kept thinking, there's so many of these cases. I read about them. I hear about them. Jim lived them. Jim lived 100 cases. Okay, the Centurion has 71 exonerations. Some of the cases didn't go so well, but over 100 cases you guys have worked on over the years. Yeah. Just talking to Jim and reading what I read and seeing all these incredible cases, exonerations, you just kind of get locked into it, and you go almost every week. There's another incredible exoneration. Last year in Virginia, we exonerated a man who served 48 years, which is the record. In Missouri, exonerated a woman who served 45 years, which is a record. Records for what? This is human suffering, okay? Yeah. And so you just read about these stories, and so we could have picked dozens of cases, and so we had to kind of pick. One thing we wanted to do is take the 10 cases, a total of 22 or 23 exonerees or innocent people, and make at least half of them to be white people. Because white people don't believe that there are thousands of innocent people in prison. Black people know that. Yeah. They've lived it, they've seen it, okay? And when I make a speech to a white audience, I will say there are thousands of innocent people in prison, and you don't believe that because you're white. Mm-hmm. Listen to me. It's true, okay? And they don't listen. We wanted to show cases where white people where everybody's white, jurors, cops, DAs, everybody, have screwed the system and convicted innocent people who've gone away to prison and even been executed, okay? We kind of expect it out of minorities and people, you know, we sort of expect that in our society. But we wanted to show that this happens across the board. Yeah. It happens everywhere. It's not just a small town problem, a big city problem. It is everywhere, Jim. In all 50 states, big cities are the worst. Counties, rural counties where there's little training, little money, the cases are everywhere.
Since 1989, when DNA first came out, was used in the criminal justice system, and when the National Registration of Exonerations came into being, which they tabulate, they chronicle each exoneration that happens across the country. 1,300 murder convictions have been vacated, reversed. They got the wrong person, mostly men, a few women. We freed 3 women so far. Among those 1,300 cases of exoneration since '89, 115 murder convictions were reversed in Manhattan alone, 39 in Brooklyn, 77 in Philadelphia altogether since 1990, 44 in Dallas, Texas, 63 in New Orleans. It happens everywhere.
Right.
And African Americans bear the brunt of wrongful convictions, no question about that, but it does spill over to people of no color, white people. And we see that time. Of the 23 people we've chronicled in the book, in 10 different stories, some were co-defendants, 10 are white and 13 are black. And the one white person who was executed, who's in the book, John wrote this, Willingham out of Texas, he was executed for an arson that never happened. It was an accident. But he was executed. He was white. So you got to be on your toes.
It's a brilliant story. Please buy the book. It's really.
Yeah.
These are great stories.
It's great.
Also, Jim did the spoiler alert, not me.
Yeah.
And the one case I didn't know about from Centurion is of a woman that you wrote about.
Yeah, one of our stories had to be about a woman. I mean, you know, you can't forget the fairest sex here. So her name is Ellen Reasonover, and she was convicted of a gas station attempted robbery and fatal shooting of the attendant in St. Louis. And she ended up doing 16 and a half years in prison. We were able to exonerate her, but she went to that gas station the night of the murder and robbery and saw and she's African American. She saw 2 African American men leave the station. So she thought they worked there, but were closing up. As it turns out, she wakes up the next day and she sees on the TV that the gas station attendant who was murdered at about that time was white. So what did she do? She called the police to report what she had seen. And they, in turn, you can't explain this stuff.
But they can read it.
Huh?
They can read it.
Yeah, they can read it, right. That's Dave's signal, cut it.
That phone call to the police cost her 16 years.
16 years. So they came to believe that she came forward to lead them astray. Yeah. I'm not going to bother. Yeah, as Dave says, please read the story.
Buy the book. Yeah, buy the book.
So each of you have written and have experienced firsthand the perseverance, courage, and quite remarkable spirits of those who have suffered unimaginable injustice, lost years of their life, including Mr. Walker. And I wondered if you could speak a little bit more to what you've observed in these remarkable folks who endured such suffering and their own continued fortitude in the midst of these circumstances.
Well, first of all, I can't imagine if you're sitting in a courtroom as a defendant, most of them, when they get to that point, they still believe. Because first of all the people in our book, none of them had a criminal record. None. They were all clean as a whistle as far as as far as that goes. And but if you're sitting at that defense table, you are somehow, in your naivete, convinced that the truth will come out and the jury will acquit you. Then when they don't, I mean, you're just absolutely shell-shocked and stunned. And off to prison you go, either for life or for death, which are the only cases we take on. And the first couple of years are really rough in prison because they've never been confined anywhere. And they're scared to death. Some have encountered some difficult physical problems. And they're also, by the way, filled with hate and anger, at least in the beginning, first couple of years. Then they realize that's just a cancer eating at me. And they begin to grow up, mature as young men, into their 20s and into their 30s. And they begin to drop those kinds of emotions, and they take on a more positive way about them. Their demeanor changes. They start to change their behavior and the way they conduct themselves in prison. They start reaching out to the world, and they start taking their wrongful convictions serious and trying to get somebody in the world to help to believe in them. Now, as we have here with Larry Walker, Larry's daughter, Sharina, and son Larry, they're here. Sharina was 2 years old when Larry was convicted. And she and Larry, throughout his 38 years of confinement, were it not for them, his family, and we've had a number of our exonerees have strong family relationships, some of them did not. But those who did, their families kept their hope alive. So it's hope. And we like to think that we bring hope over despair in conjunction with their families, and things start to turn in their favor. But once they get out, most of our people we freed have been in prison for a good 20, 25 years, minimum. And they all have PTSD, without a doubt. And to adapt to the whole new world after decades in prison for something they didn't do is a whole new set of challenges that they have to take on. The relationship with family members starts to change and take on a different color. It's a whole new set of challenges. They had one set of challenges surviving in prison, and now a whole new set trying to acclimate themselves and start life all over again, which is what they do. And it's not easy, and as Corey mentioned, we do our best to help them in that regard.
Anything to add, John, on that?
They're remarkable people. They are remarkable people, and they are what motivates us. The people who are active with innocence groups and innocence advocates and innocence lawyers to keep going, because we are motivated by our clients and their perseverance and their determination to get out and to solve problems and to prevent future wrongful convictions. And they know how many innocent people are in prison. They've been there, okay? And they inspire us daily to keep working.
So I only have two more questions, and then we're going to, with the help of library staff, open up to some questions from the audience. I almost said congregation, sorry. By the way, when Jim's memoir came out, he went to Barnes & Noble in Market Fair and found where the books were. He didn't like the location and asked the manager to move them more front and center.
Well, it wasn't, they had one book.
Yeah.
So and you could hardly see it, so I stuck it out so people could see it. And then when I went back the next day, it was back in where it was.
Jim, don't worry about this one, okay?
No,
don't worry.
So part of the voice, your unique voices that I was mentioning earlier, John, you clearly, in my opinion, use stronger adjectives to reflect your own frustration and rage as you were describing these stories and allowing the reader to engage with that same reaction.
Yeah.
Jim, You have been doing this work, you did this work for 40 years. And how do you not, both of you, as you've delved into these stories, how do you not lose heart?
You want to take that?
Well, again, you're inspired by the people you've met who have persevered. You're inspired to help those who are still there. There's a young man in Oklahoma who's been in prison for 40 years. We can't get him out. We're still corresponding. He prays for me more than I pray for him. He inspires me. So we get that inspiration. We also are inspired by the fact that what the work we're doing is gradually improving the system, okay? Because jurors nowadays return fewer and fewer death verdicts in this country because changes in the way we do things, changes in the way they are allowed to see the full scope of what the defendant, where he came from. And so they are more likely to spare the life and do life without parole. We see fewer executions every year. We believe, I think rightly so, that the work we do inspires jurors to be far more suspicious and cynical of what they are told in court by police and prosecutors. We believe that happens, and so there are fewer and fewer death verdicts. Every year, more and more state legislatures pass more and more bills that we push, policy changes to correct the laws to prevent future wrongful convictions. Progress is very, very slow, but we keep pushing. And that's what inspires us to keep going. We're making progress. And someday, I don't know when, someday soon, the death penalty will be gone, and we will have laws that are much better to prevent wrongful convictions, to prevent innocent people from being convicted.
Amen.
See, one other thing, there's a lot of things that have developed in the last 15, 20 years. The first conviction integrity unit, now that is a district attorney, internal district attorney office consisting of lawyers and investigators whose mission and function it is within the DA's office to reinvestigate cases that occurred in their jurisdiction years before with the understanding that possibly this could be a wrongful conviction. Now, the first one that was established in the US in that regard was in Dallas, Texas in 2007 by a Craig Watkins, who was the first African-American district attorney elected in Texas. He started that. And as a result of that, a number of fairly robust, not a lot, but a few very robust conviction integrity units have sprung up all across the United States, and they're doing their best. Now, there's a number of these, I don't know, I think the number's like 70 conviction integrity units. It's like the thing to do in a number of offices. It makes them look good, that they really care. I'm talking about the local DA. But on the other hand, there are some very good ones at work, and one of them is in Philadelphia with Larry Krasner. His conviction integrity unit has freed 44 people in the last 6 years.
Wow.
The Brooklyn DA, their conviction integrity unit has freed 39 people. So, some of them are doing, Dallas, 44 people as well. But what America doesn't do, we've also freed 2 Canadians, one in Saskatoon and one in Winnipeg. And for the most part, every time a wrongful conviction is demonstrated to have taken place and the convicted person has been freed and exonerated, the Canadians hold a public court of inquiry. What went wrong in this case? And who did what? And with full subpoena power, they get all the files of all the different police agencies, all the different district attorney offices, attorney generals, and they bring people in to testify. And in the public testimony, covered by the media, they hold their feet to the fire. And that includes defense lawyers who were inept as well. And so in America, I just checked the National Registry of Exonerations this morning, 3,500 exonerations since 1989. I'm not aware of one instance anywhere where a public court of inquiry has been held for any specific wrongful conviction. So it's like, all right, it's another one, let's move on. So I really find that disappointing.
There's only been one prosecutor in American history who went to jail for a wrongful conviction. Michael Morton's case in Texas.
Yeah.
The prosecutor later became the judge. He hid evidence. He got the conviction. Michael Morton, who could be your Sunday school teacher.
Right.
Spent 25 years for murdering his wife. Got out, exonerated. The DA became the judge, and they filed ethics complaints. They finally convicted him. He surrendered his license. He was sentenced to 10 days in jail in Texas and released after 5 days for good behavior. He's the only one we know of, the only prosecutor, judge, whatever, who's gone to jail in America for sending innocent people to jail.
C-SPAN's Afterwards podcast continues in a moment. Now back to C-SPAN's Afterwards podcast.
So, friends, one of the things that you will learn when you read the book is that Jim tells stories from the ground up, detail after detail after detail. And as you could hear in John's answers, that John is a little bit more theoretical and bringing up systemic issues. Jim doesn't shy away from that, but that's part of John's advocacy, is naming the systemic injustices from junk science to completely misrepresenting things, to rogue people in the justice system, to what in my business we would call just abhorrent and evil behavior. But I want you to know, I can read a Grisham book from cover to cover, right? You can't read this book cover to cover. And it's not because it's not incredibly compelling, not because they don't have you at the first sentence of every chapter in the palm of their hand. It's the weight of the suffering that you read about. And so you will hear that and see that as you read through this book. We're going to have some questions from some folks in the congregation. We're only going to do a few questions, so we're almost done.
My name is Ed Steer, and I have a confession to make. I was prosecuted for 17 years at the beginning of my legal career, and I understand the issues that you're talking about. Having lived through, Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, good.
Okay. So I was saying I spent the first 17 years of my legal career as a prosecutor, and at one point was the chief prosecutor in New Jersey, and I lived through the kinds of cases that you're describing. This goes back quite a way before DNA testing, but we investigated some wrongful convictions, including one that was a notorious crime, Hurricane Carter, professional boxer who was ultimately exonerated. And I can tell you that internally, within the prosecutor's office, there is a terrible struggle that goes on. There is enormous pressure not to overturn a case where there's been a conviction, regardless of the loose ends that begin to unravel and the uncertainties that you begin to feel about that conviction. And I'm wondering whether in recent years, in your experience, prosecutors' offices are beginning to look, aside from these special units that have been created, but in the day-to-day work that a prosecutor is doing, evaluating information that they're getting from the police, examining witnesses, evaluating the credibility of the evidence that they're sifting through, are they thinking differently? Are they affected by all of these cases in which convictions have been overturned and people after decades have been released because they didn't commit the crimes? Or are prosecutors still thinking essentially the same way that they did way back when a cop walks in and said, that guy did it, and now it's your job to organize the evidence to support that case rather than look critically at it?
Well, let me take a crack at that. One thing is, there are, 3,200 counties in the United States. Each office is different, each environment is different, so it's tough to generalize. Now, we are picking up cases, Centurion that is, we're picking up cases that have had a number of years behind them. They're old, relatively old cases. And, you know, I think John pointed out that there are new laws that are being established in terms of recording interrogations, which did not exist before, doing photo lineups differently. Also, by the way, I just came across an article not too long ago. The state of Illinois, the state requires every single police cadet who's going to be a police officer anywhere with any agency in Illinois to attend a wrongful conviction course and to be on the lookout for why. Be careful if you have a suspect, going after that suspect without due investigation. So, you know, there are really some indications that things are changing. However, if you're a young homicide prosecutor, even today is my view, and you go into court to prosecute a defendant of murder, and you go back to your office with 5 out of 10 convictions and 5 acquittals, you're not looking very good in that office. So it doesn't behoove your reputation to have a bad record, a 50-50 record. Same with police officers. Their mission is to clear cases. In Philadelphia, as an example, they have 4 homicide squads of homicide investigators. At least they did back when I was working Philadelphia cases. And you have 4 investigators for each squad. Each squad is supervised by a lieutenant. Every 2 squads by a sergeant. Every 2 squads by a lieutenant. So if your squad is not clearing cases like the other squads are in the same homicide unit, you know, you're going to get a lot of heat. So then they start to look good, to clear the cases, they start taking shortcuts. It's human nature. And I'm not sure human nature has changed all that much among the folks we're talking about.
My name is Deb Friedman. I read Framed. It was superb. This was the most disturbing part of it for me. The one that haunts me is what a tangled web we weave.
Yeah.
When it is known, I don't want to give away anything, the identity of the killer.
Yeah.
And yet, he's roaming around
Yes.
loose.
Yeah.
So I ask you gentlemen, why?
Well, yeah, well, you know, there are some in the book, in Framed, there are, one of the common themes that we see is the real murder is right under the nose of the police from the outset. And for some reason, they get led astray with a certain suspect, and then they try and develop and manufacture as much evidence against that suspect and disregard all the evidence or information that comes in that goes to the innocence of that suspect and maybe the guilt of the guilty of the real killer. One thing, in the story you talk about, that's the ninth chapter in our book. That was the 20,000 word thing. So, yeah, but
way too long. Way too long.
What'd you think, Dave? No, I'm kidding you. I'm kidding you. I'm going to put you in a spot. But the point I'm trying to make is, it's so obvious when we review a case. in these situations that this person looks like the real killer. Let's investigate him in addition to all the other aspects to it. And not only that, in 2 of our 10 cases, the real killer was the star witness for the prosecution against the innocent person. Yeah. Now that's what really drives me out of my mind.
No.
Yeah.
Who did it?
Yeah. Well,
why is this man not in jail?
Because the prosecutors and the police don't want to admit they made a mistake of that magnitude.
That's not a good reason.
Well, that's I know it's not a good reason.
No, it's not. It's a terrible reason.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No. Anybody else have a question?
2 more questions?
I think there's one upstairs.
Yeah, upstairs.
Does anybody have anyone upstairs?
Thank you, all of you, for coming tonight and sharing your stories with us. I look forward to reading Framed. I would like to know if Mr. Grisham and Mr. McCloskey, what your future plans are for working together on any projects on
What you said.
We have no plan.
exoneration.
John, we brought John up this past April when we brought in some of our exonerees for a retreat. And John volunteered to come up and meet them and speak with them. This is just this past April. And so Corey asked John to say a few words at this gathering of exonerees and Centurion staff. And John's first remark was, you know, I've never invited anybody, I've never co-written a book with anybody else except Jim, and I'm never doing it again.
I offered that softball, and he didn't swing at it.
Right.
There will be no sequel. No sequel. You know, I don't know. In 2006, I published The Innocent Man, and I said, I'll never do it again. I'll never do it again. I got sued 4 times by bad guys. We won all the lawsuits, but it was such an emotional drain going through litigation, and so I said I will never do it again. At the same time, I love the stories. I love these stories, and I so admire the exonerees who survived these nightmares, and it's just there's such great stories of human sacrifice and human survival. I just can't let them go, and so I can't say. The thing about Jim, the guy wrote half a book, and his arm blew out. So I'm thinking, he can't write anymore, so I'm not sure. I may have to find another co-writer for the next one, but we have no plans. We plan to enjoy this to the umpteenth degree, okay? And today's publication day. We go to New York next week for a full day of television and stuff like that, and Jim gets to be a total rock star on CBS Good Morning and CBS Sunday Morning, and what else?
Well, here's the rock star. So we are going on The View next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. So we're going on The View, and it sounds like a lot of you are familiar with that program. They only have room for one of us at the table with the hosts. They're sticking me up in the balcony.
Yeah. We're doing C-SPAN's here. We're doing PBS NewsHour. We're doing what else? We're doing all kinds of stuff.
Well, these CBS
Morning Joe next Wednesday morning. Morning Joe. So we got a whole lineup of stuff next week, and we're gonna have a ball and make the most of it, and never work again together forever.
One more. Janie, one more up there. No.
Yeah, up here. I wonder if this is a particularly American problem or a human nature problem, or do we only know about the American cases?
That's a good question. Thank you for that. And I'd like to take a shot at that. And my view is that America's criminal justice system, in terms of convicting innocent people relative in relative numbers and absolute numbers is by far the worst of any Western society, Western democratic society. You know, Western Europe, France, Germany, etc. Now, I'm not an expert on those criminal justice systems, but you just don't hear about that. We keep our ear pretty close to the ground. I mean, come on. There have been 3,500 exonerations since '89. That's unheard of. The numbers are untold. I think there are tens of thousands of people in prison, in state prisons, convicted of murder or sexual assault who had nothing to do with the crime. And I don't know whether I mentioned this earlier or not, but there have been 1,600 executions in the United States since 1976. Of those, during that same period of time, there have been 200 people who have been exonerated and freed off of death row.
Off death row, yeah.
So if my arithmetic is anywhere close where it might be, for every 100 executions performed in the United States during all those years, 11 have been exonerated. That's a pretty high percentage of serious mistakes. God knows how many people have been executed who had nothing to do with a crime.
And we have over 2 million people in prison and incarcerated, which is the highest incarceration rate in the world. Forget the Western world, the world, and the highest incarceration rate in history, okay? So we lock up so many people, we have so many harsh, draconian laws and parole rules. Once people are in, they can't get out. You got to figure that we have so many more innocent people in prison. That's what we're doing. And we've sort of just come to accept that, okay? We lock up so many people for minor crimes, for small crimes, for nonviolent drug crimes. We have 1 million young black men in prison right now for nonviolent drug crimes, mass incarceration. It's been going on for years. That's what we do. We're still doing it. It's getting better. There's some relief, but you got to figure with that many people locked up, and the cost is enormous for all of us to pay for it. Okay, but you got to figure with that many people locked up, we have a much higher rate of wrongful convictions than probably anywhere else in the world.
You know, even Russia has a moratorium on the death penalty. They haven't executed anybody since 1996.
Well, unless you're a soldier in Ukraine. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about. My mistake.
Okay. Wow.
She's cutting us off.
I'm not cutting you off. I think we could all stay here for a much longer time. But I know you have also busy schedules. So thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening. I'm Janie Herman, Adult Programming Manager. So, hang on. I'd like to request that everybody remain seated for just one more moment. Please just remain seated for one more moment for the night. Give another round of applause for John, Jim, and David for this thought-provoking conversation. Thank you.
This conversation is just one of many you can find every weekend on C-SPAN 2's Book TV. Next week on this podcast, Josh Dawsey, Tyler Page, and Isaac Arnsdorf talk about their new book, 2024, How Trump Retook the White House and Democrats Lost America. It's a behind-the-scenes account of the 2024 presidential election.